The storm over Silver Ridge roared like a crashing server in the dark. Through the blinding white, a pregnant German shepherd ran for her life, fleeing from the shadows of a high-tech crime syndicate that used trained dogs to smuggle microchips and illegal hardware. When a fallen tree trapped her beneath the snow, her cries vanished into the howling wind. That's when Deputy Nathan Cole's headlights cut through the storm. He stopped, lifted the shattered trunk, and carried her out of the blizzard, unaware that the creature in his arms held the key to exposing one of the world's darkest tech empires. What happened next will make you believe that even in a world of machines, the truest code is written in the heart. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from tonight? Drop your country in the comments. Let's see how far this story travels. The wind screamed over the mountains of Silver Ridge, slicing through pine forests and abandoned power lines like a furious god made of static and snow. The night was a living blizzard, white, roaring, endless. Beneath that storm, something moved, stumbling through the drifts with desperate rhythm. A German shepherd, her belly heavy with life, her fur a mixture of black and amber dulled by frost, fought against the storm. Each breath steamed out in ragged bursts. She was barely 4 years old, strong, young, but her ribs ached and her eyes burned with exhaustion. Her name, once spoken by human voices in tones of command, was Dakota. Now there was only the wind and the memory of voices that had betrayed her. Behind her, through the howl of the storm, came faint mechanical hums, the electric purr of engines, snowmobiles cutting through the darkness. The Syndicate, a network of cybercriminals known in the underworld as Caney Tech's ghost handlers, were closing in. They weren't just smugglers, they were engineers of crime, men who used living creatures as carriers for illegal tech, microchips, encrypted drives, nano-storage capsules buried beneath skin and fur. To them, Dakota was not a being, but a container. Somewhere inside her body was something they wanted back, something that cost more than her life. The snow thickened. She leapt a fallen branch and winced as pain flared through her hind leg, a wound from a tranquilizer dart that had grazed her an hour earlier. She didn't know why she ran anymore. Instinct, fear, maybe the faint scent of freedom carried on the storm. Lightning flashed across the mountains, white veins through a black sky. Then came the crack. A sound sharper than thunder, the groan of a dying tree. She looked up just in time to see a massive pine, split by the storm's wrath, collapsing toward her. The impact wasn't loud. It was a muffled crash swallowed by snow. The trunk pinned her rear legs to the frozen ground. The shock stole her breath. She struggled, snarling and pawing at the snow, but the weight was immovable. Snowflakes gathered on her muzzle. Her amber eyes, one flecked with gold, the other clouded from an old training injury, flickered between panic and defiance. Somewhere far below the storm, a siren whispered through the valley. A single light approached, steady, deliberate. The light belonged to Deputy Nathan Cole. Nathan was 34, tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of posture that came from years of military service and the kind of weariness that comes from surviving it. His face was sharply cut, the jawline rough with stubble, his eyes a stormy gray that never seemed to rest. He wore a dark navy patrol coat marked with the Silver Ridge Sheriff's Department badge, its edges dusted with frost. He had joined the police force after 2 tours overseas as a military police officer, tours that had taken more from him than anyone could see. He still walked with the quiet caution of a soldier, his gaze scanning every shadow, his hand always close to his weapon, though he prayed he'd never have to draw it again. The loneliness of the mountains suited him. Silver Ridge, with its narrow roads and silent forests, was a place where people disappeared, and Nathan preferred it that way. The night of the blizzard was supposed to be routine patrol. It had been 87 days since his last major call. He had counted each one, like a man waiting for trouble to find him again. When his headlights sliced through the white wall of snow and reflected off something dark, fur, movement, struggle, he almost didn't trust his eyes. He slowed, tires crunching against the ice, and stepped out into the wind. "What the hell?" he muttered, pulling his collar up. The beam of his flashlight cut through the snow and found her, the German shepherd, trapped under a fallen pine, chest heaving in uneven rhythm. Blood, black against the white snow, seeped from her flank. Nathan froze for half a second. He had seen that breed before, in training yards overseas, working dogs. Disciplined, intelligent, loyal to death. This one looked like them, but broken, starved, afraid. Still, her eyes met his, not with submission, but defiance, a soldier's glare. "Easy, girl," he whispered, crouching beside her. His gloved hand brushed against the bark, the weight heavy and cold. The dog growled softly, unsure. Her breath came in short, trembling bursts. "You're hurt," he murmured, his voice steady but gentle, the same tone he had once used to calm panicked soldiers after a firefight. "I'm going to help you." He pressed his shoulder against the fallen trunk, grunting, his boots slipping in the snow. The tree shifted an inch, then another. She whimpered but did not cry. That stubborn silence struck him, that instinct to endure. With a final push, the trunk rolled just enough for her to drag herself free. She stumbled forward, collapsing in the snow. Nathan caught her, surprised by the warmth of her body against his cold gloves. He felt the rapid thump of her heart, the shiver of muscles too long strained. Around her neck hung a torn black collar, not a pet's tag, but a reinforced strap with faint letters burned into the leather. Unit D-47, property of Tech Systems. Nathan's eyes narrowed. Tech, the same corporation under investigation for illegal AI imports and cybernetic trafficking. "What the hell were they doing with you?" he whispered. The dog blinked, as if understanding. The storm howled louder, carrying with it the faint hum of engines somewhere behind the ridge. Nathan looked back toward the darkness. For a fleeting second, he saw what could have been headlights. Then, they vanished into the snow. A prickling ran down his neck. Someone else was out here. He lifted the dog into his arms. She was heavier than she looked, her body trembling but her eyes fixed. Forward, watching the tree line like a sentry. "You're safe now," he said softly, more to himself than to her. He carried her to the patrol truck, setting her carefully on the passenger seat. The faint metallic glint of something caught his eye, half buried near the fallen tree, blinking red through the snow. A small tracking device, no bigger than a coin, still pulsing with life. Nathan pocketed it. The storm screamed around him, relentless. As he climbed into the truck, Dakota shifted weakly, letting out a soft, exhausted sigh. He turned the ignition. The headlights flared, casting light over the forest road. For a heartbeat, through the reflection in his mirror, he thought he saw a figure standing at the tree line, tall, still, and too calm for this storm. But when he looked again, it was gone. Only snow remained, falling in thick, heavy silence. Nathan's hand tightened on the steering wheel. He whispered, "You're safe now, girl." But somewhere deep inside, he knew neither of them were safe anymore. Morning crept into Silver Ridge like a secret that didn't want to be told. The storm had passed, but the world still felt bruised. Snow lay in deep folds across the forest floor, and the light that filtered through the clouds was pale, like it had forgotten how to be warm. The town itself was quiet, save for the crunch of Nathan Cole's boots as he carried the wounded German shepherd into the small brick building at the end of Main Street. Hart Veterinary Clinic. Inside, warmth greeted him in the form of soft light and the faint smell of antiseptic and cedar shavings. Dr. Emma Hart emerged from the back room. She was 28, tall but lean, the kind of woman whose strength came from quiet endurance rather than display. Her skin was fair, though the mountain winters had left a permanent flush on her cheeks, and her hair, a chestnut brown, was tied in a low ponytail that seemed too practical for the elegance of her face. Her eyes, a calm, pale green, carried both intelligence and fatigue, the kind you find in people who have spent years healing what others have broken. She was used to broken things, stray animals, wild rescues, wounded trust. She took one look at Dakota and froze. "How long has she been like this?" Her voice was calm but threaded with urgency. Nathan placed the dog gently on the stainless steel table. "Since last night. Found her under a fallen tree, trapped. She's pregnant." Emma's brow furrowed as she examined the deep bruising around the dog's ribs. Her hands moved quickly, professional, tracing the fur where blood had dried. "You said you found her in the woods?" she asked. Nathan nodded, still holding his coat tightly closed against his chest. "And I found this." He reached into his pocket and pulled out the small, blinking tracker he had discovered in the snow. The red light still pulsed like a heartbeat. Emma took it from him and frowned. That's not a regular GPS chip. It's military grade, encrypted frequency band. She looked up at him, eyes narrowing. Nathan, where exactly did you find her? Nathan hesitated. His mind replayed the storm, the distant hum of snowmobiles, the faint glow of headlights fading into the trees. Close to the East Ridge, he said finally, near the old telecom relay tower. Emma's jaw tightened. That tower was shut down 3 years ago. Dakota let out a low, pained sound, and both turned their attention back to her. The dog's breathing was steady but shallow, her belly trembling under the pressure of pregnancy. Emma injected a mild sedative and began scanning her with a handheld medical reader. The screen flickered, static at first, then filled with a long string of symbols, binary codes, encrypted data sequences. Emma frowned and adjusted the frequency. The code changed again, resolving into a pattern unlike anything she had seen in veterinary work. "What the hell?" she whispered. Nathan leaned closer. "What is it?" "There's something embedded beneath her skin," Emma murmured. "It's not just a microchip. It's broadcasting." She lifted her gaze, and for a moment, he saw fear break through her professionalism. "Someone's tracking her." The words landed like a punch. Nathan straightened, his instincts sharpening. "You mean whoever put that in her knows where she is right now?" Emma nodded. "If the signal's active, yes, but this—" She paused, zooming in on the code. "This isn't a pet ID or GPS. It's a data encryption stream, military or corporate. She's carrying something digital, something valuable." Nathan's mind churned. The collar, the label, property of Kane Tech Systems. He'd heard the name before, in briefings, whispered among agents in law enforcement networks. Marcus Kane's company, a front for tech trafficking, data laundering, and cybernetic modification. "Kane Tech," he muttered. "They've been on the radar for months." Emma glanced at him. "You think they're involved?" "I don't think," he said quietly. "I know." He moved toward the window, his gray eyes sweeping the street outside. The town looked peaceful, kids playing near the diner, an old man shoveling snow. But Nathan had been in enough war zones to know how peace disguises danger. "They'll come for her," he said under his breath. "Something this valuable, they won't just let it go." Emma was silent for a moment, watching Dakota's pulse slow under sedation. "You care about her," she said softly, almost as if surprised. Nathan didn't answer right away. He thought about the night before, her amber eyes locking onto his, full of both pain and defiance. "I've seen eyes like that before," he said finally, "in soldiers who've seen too much and trusted too little." He exhaled, the air fogging in front of him. "She's not just some animal. She's surviving." Emma's lips curved in a faint, sad smile. "Then let's help her keep surviving." She reached for her surgical tools and carefully made a small incision near Dakota's shoulder, her hands steady even as the reader beeped faster. Beneath the skin, glinting faintly under the sterile light, was a thin metallic shard no larger than a fingernail, lined with microscopic circuits. Emma lifted it with forceps. The shard pulsed once with a soft blue light before going dark. "What is that?" Nathan asked. Emma placed it on the table under a magnifier. "It's a hybrid biochip, partially organic, partially synthetic. I've never seen one like it. It's not just storing data, it's alive in a way, self-regenerating material, designed to bond with tissue." She looked at Nathan. "This thing could hold terabytes of data, and no one would ever find it unless they cut her open." Dakota stirred in her sleep, letting out a soft whine, as if hearing the conversation in her dreams. Nathan's fists clenched unconsciously. "They used her," he said bitterly. "Turned her into a machine." Emma's expression darkened. "And now that you've brought her here, we're both on their radar." He met her eyes, calm but unyielding. "Then we don't hide. We find out what's inside that chip before they do." She sighed. "You don't even know what kind of people you're dealing with." "I know their type," Nathan said. "People who think the world is just circuits and numbers. People who forget that living things bleed." For a long moment, neither spoke. The room hummed with the sound of Dakota's slow breathing and the faint whir of the clinic's generator outside. Then, from somewhere beyond the frosted window, came a sound, the distant growl of an engine, muffled but deliberate. Nathan's gaze flicked toward the street, instincts igniting like a spark. He walked to the window and saw a black SUV parked across the road, engine idling. Two men sat inside, silhouettes behind tinted glass. Emma followed his gaze, her face paling. "Nathan," she whispered, "do you think—" He raised a hand to silence her. "Stay with the dog. Lock the back door." He turned toward the front, his pulse steady but cold. The SUV's headlights dimmed, then went out completely. Snow began falling again, slow, soundless, and heavy. Nathan reached for the pistol at his hip, eyes still fixed on the street outside. When he turned back to tell Emma to stay calm, the blinking chip on the metal tray lit up again, glowing brighter, pulsing faster, like something awakening. Then it emitted a single, sharp tone. A signal. Nathan froze. The sound wasn't just mechanical, it was rhythmic, intentional, like Morse code. And when it stopped, Dakota, still sedated on the table, opened her eyes, wide, alert, and strangely aware. The blizzard had faded, leaving Silver Ridge blanketed in a deceptive calm. Snow glittered under the dim glow of the sheriff's office lamps, and the wind whispered through the broken glass like a dying breath. Inside, Deputy Nathan Cole sat alone at his desk, a man worn by too many midnights and not enough peace. His coat hung heavy with frost, his unshaven face marked by fatigue, and his gray eyes fixed on the phone he had pulled from the snow the night before. A phone that pulsed faintly with the sigil of Caney Tech Systems, a wolf's head made of silver circuitry. Dakota lay near the heater, her breathing steady but watchful, her body still bearing the stiffness of old pain. The air between man and dog hummed with quiet understanding, both survivors of someone else's cruelty. Nathan cracked his knuckles and began his work. He wasn't just a small-town deputy. Before the quiet years, he had been part of the military police's digital forensics division, a man who had once decrypted the darkest corners of war. Those instincts never left him. He connected the phone to his computer, bypassed its firewalls, and began unlocking its secrets. Each click revealed fragments of a hidden world, encrypted videos, operational logs, strange numeric codes. When he opened the first file, his stomach tightened. The screen flickered to life with footage from a sterile white laboratory. Men and women in masks moved around a table where several German shepherds, dogs like Dakota, were restrained by metallic braces. Surgical lights glared down. Gloved hands inserted chips beneath their skin while a cold voice narrated, "Bioorganic hosts show increased data stability within neural tissue." Nathan's throat went dry. In the next clip, a shepherd barked as electrodes were attached to its spine. Commands echoed through the speakers, each word triggering a violent convulsion, until the voice, detached and mechanical, said, "Unit D47 operational." The collar in the video bore the same burned marking Dakota wore. Nathan turned off the audio, but the images wouldn't stop playing in his mind. He looked at Dakota, now sleeping uneasily, her ear twitching as if she heard ghosts. He had seen cruelty before, men breaking men, nations breaking souls. But this was different. This was the cold efficiency of a world that had replaced conscience with code. His jaw tightened. Canetech wasn't just experimenting, they were using living beings as carriers for encrypted contraband, turning loyal creatures into walking vaults. He barely had time to process the horror when a sharp knock echoed through the station. It was late, too late for visitors. His instincts flared. He reached for his sidearm, eyes narrowing. "Silver Ridge Sheriff's Office," he called. No reply. Another knock, firmer, deliberate. Dakota lifted her head, a low growl rumbling from deep in her chest. Nathan's pulse slowed, not from calm, but from focus. He unlocked the door halfway, just enough to meet the night. A man stood in the snow, tall and lean, wrapped in a black military coat buttoned to the throat. His dark hair was slicked back neatly, and his face was all edges, high cheekbones, hollow cheeks, eyes the color of cold metal. His gloved hands rested casually in his pockets, though every movement carried the precision of someone who calculated everything. "Deputy Cole," he said, voice smooth and polite, "I believe you have something that belongs to us." Nathan's grip on his weapon tightened slightly. "Depends who's asking." The man smiled faintly. "Ricky Vaughn, Security Division, Caney Tech Systems." His tone carried authority wrapped in velvet. "A valuable asset of ours was misplaced during a recent operation. We have reason to believe you found it." Nathan stepped aside slightly, shielding Dakota from view. "Can't say I've seen anything that fits your description." Ricky's smile widened, but his eyes stayed sharp. "That's unfortunate. My employer would be quite disappointed. We take our property seriously." His gaze drifted past Nathan's shoulder, toward the faint movement by the heater. "Especially when it walks away." Nathan blocked his line of sight. "You should leave." For a heartbeat, silence hung between them, two men studying each other, soldier and predator. Then Ricky sighed as if pitying him. "You think you're doing the right thing, but she's not what you believe she is. She was built, deputy, not born. Her loyalty is conditional, her instincts manufactured, and when she turns on you, remember I warned you." He reached slowly into his coat and Nathan raised his gun, ready to fire. But instead of a weapon, Ricky produced a small black micro SD card and dropped it onto the snow. "When curiosity wins, play it. It'll save you time." Then he turned, the tails of his coat flaring as he walked into the storm. Nathan didn't move until the sound of footsteps vanished. Dakota stood now, tense, her eyes fixed on the door. "It's okay," he murmured, though he didn't believe it. He closed the door, locked it twice, and stared at the card glinting in his hand. He hesitated, then slid it into the computer. A video loaded immediately. The image was dim, the sound distorted. A man's silhouette stood before a wall of glowing monitors, hands clasped behind his back. Even through static, the voice was unmistakably calm, rich, and commanding. "This is Marcus Kane," it said. "Our cargo doesn't run. Retrieve it. Burn everything else." Nathan froze. He'd heard that tone before, the tone of men who thought they owned the world. He paused the video, staring at the screen. Dakota paced behind him, restless. "You're not cargo," he whispered. A sudden sound outside snapped his head up, a crunch of snow, deliberate and close. He switched off the light and moved to the window. Through the frosted glass, he saw movement, a figure standing between patrol cars, motionless, watching. The shape was tall, backlit by the weak glow of the street lamp. For an instant, their gazes met through the snow. Then, the figure turned and disappeared into the white. Nathan's pulse pounded. He turned back toward the desk, only to see his computer flicker to life again, on its own. The Kane Tech logo flashed once, then vanished, replaced by a single line of text glowing in crimson letters. "We know where you are." The room fell utterly silent. Only Dakota's soft growl broke through it, a low promise of defiance in a world gone mechanical. Nathan stood frozen, realizing that the storm outside was nothing compared to the one that had just found him. Snow fell again over Silver Ridge, light and ghostly, as if the heavens were trying to bury what humanity could not forget. The town slept under that white silence, but inside the sheriff's station, tension coiled like a drawn wire. Nathan Cole stood before the evidence board, his eyes scanning every red thread and pinned photograph. Kane Tech's logo, the burned lab schematics, Ricky Vaughn's last known coordinates. His jaw was set hard, stubble shadowing the sharp line of his cheek, and his mind moved with soldier's precision. He hadn't slept in 30 hours, not since the message appeared on his screen. "We know where you are." Emma Hart stood nearby, fatigue etched under her eyes, though she refused to rest. Her hands, usually steady, trembled slightly as she prepared a sedative for Dakota, who lay on a blanket near the heater. "She's due any minute," Emma murmured, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "If she's under stress, it could complicate the delivery." Nathan nodded absently, still reading the latest intel from state authorities. "We don't have time to wait for complications." He turned toward his deputy, Harris Bell, a man in his 40s with a wide frame and a beard streaked with gray, a veteran of mountain search and rescue who had traded ice picks for a badge. Harris was slow to anger, but carried a quiet, dependable strength, the kind of man who could lift a truck if someone needed him to. "They found the warehouse," Harris said, pulling a folded map from his pocket. "Old freight depot by the Northern Rail line. One of the prisoners from last night talked." Nathan's eyes hardened. "Then that's where Vaughn will be," Emma frowned. "You can't go now. If they trace you there—" "They already have," Nathan interrupted quietly. "And if they get whatever's inside that chip, it won't just be Dakota they're after next time." He reached for his rifle and holster. Harris grabbed his coat. You'll need me." Emma opened her mouth to protest but stopped when she saw the look in Nathan's eyes. It was the same expression she'd seen in veterans facing ghosts they couldn't kill. Calm, fatal, certain. "Be careful," she whispered instead. The snow was thick again by the time they reached the old depot. It loomed like a skeleton in the fog, steel ribs, shattered windows, and rusted train cars stretching into darkness. Nathan signaled to Harris and they moved silently, flashlights off. The air smelled of oil and cold metal. Inside, shadows danced between the columns of smoke from small fires left burning in oil drums. Men moved through the haze, their voices low, their faces half covered by tactical masks. Nathan raised his rifle, eyes scanning. His pulse slowed, controlled, measured, then a figure stepped into the light, tall, sharp, unmistakable. Ricky Vaughn. "Deputy," Ricky called, his voice smooth even in echo. "You should have listened." Nathan didn't answer. He fired first. The shot cracked through the air, glass shattered and chaos erupted. Men scrambled for cover, shouting. Smoke grenades exploded, filling the depot with thick gray clouds that stung the eyes and lungs. Nathan's training kicked in. Move, fire, cover, move. Harris flanked right, shouting over the noise. "3 on your left." They fought through the storm of bullets and smoke. Nathan caught one of the masked men in a tackle, pinning him against a crate. "Where's Vaughn?" he barked. The man spit blood and muttered something in Russian before Nathan cuffed him. "Got one alive," Harris yelled. But Vaughn was gone. Nathan stared into the thick smoke, the shadows swallowing sound. Somewhere in the chaos, a faint laugh echoed, the kind of laugh that didn't belong to a man fighting for his life, but one who had already planned his escape. Then, a flash of light and the roar of an engine. Vaughn was gone, the snow swallowing his tracks. By dawn, they brought the captured man back to the station. He said little, just stared blankly at the wall as if the fear of Cane Tech was greater than any punishment law could offer. Nathan didn't press. His instincts told him there was more coming. He turned to Emma, who stood over Dakota again, this time panic etched across her face. "Nathan," she said urgently, "her contractions have started. She's in labor." For a moment, the soldier in him faltered. He looked at the exhausted dog trembling on the blanket, her breath coming fast, eyes glazed with pain but still alert. "What can I do?" he asked. "Keep everyone out and keep her calm," Emma replied, already pulling on gloves. The room filled with heat, smoke, and noise, not from the heater, but from chaos outside. The front window shattered as gunfire erupted. "They're here," Harris roared, diving for cover. The captured man had been a lure. Nathan pulled Emma down behind the desk. "Stay with her," he shouted, grabbing his rifle and kicking the door open. 3 black-clad men were approaching from the snow, firing in short, precise bursts. Bullets tore into the wooden siding, sending splinters flying. Dakota whined, trying to rise despite the pain. "No, girl, stay down," Emma murmured, her voice breaking. Nathan and Harris returned fire, their rifles flashing against the stormlight. The air reeked of gunpowder and burning insulation as one of the invaders hurled a smoke grenade through the window. The sirens blared, the automatic fire alarm triggered by the heat of gunfire. Inside, the room was a maelstrom of red light, alarms, and choking smoke. Emma's hands worked blindly, her breath fast but focused. "Come on, Dakota. Come on, sweetheart." One pup slid into her hands, then another, slick and small, squirming. "That's it. Keep breathing." Nathan ducked behind the overturned table, shouting to Harris. "We can't hold them much longer." Harris grinned grimly. "Then we'll make it count." He fired again, dropping one of the masked figures before catching a shot in the shoulder. He grunted but stayed standing. "Go help her!" Nathan turned as another explosion rocked the building. Flames licked up the far wall, the scent of burning wires filling the air. He ran back into the room just as Emma cradled a third puppy in her palms. Dakota was still straining, her body shaking. "She's not done," Emma cried, and then, one last sound, half whimper, half sigh, and the 4th pup arrived. Emma wrapped them quickly in a blanket, pressing them close to Dakota's side. 4, she breathed, 4 of them. Nathan stood there for a second, smoke curling around him, disbelief and awe cutting through the chaos. The dog that had survived bullets, betrayal, and storms had brought life into this burning world. "We can't stay here," he said finally. "They'll burn the whole place down." He lifted Dakota gently, careful of her trembling body and the pups nestled against her. Emma gathered her tools, coughing through the smoke. Harris limped after them, blood seeping through his sleeve. They stumbled out into the cold, the flames behind them turning the snow red. For a moment, the world was nothing but light, noise, and breath. Then, silence again, broken only by the tiny squeaks of newborn life. Nathan looked at the bundle in Emma's arms, then at the rising smoke over the station. "Hell of a night," he said hoarsely. Emma smiled weakly through soot-streaked cheeks. "The kind that changes everything." From somewhere beyond the trees, the echo of an engine faded into the storm. Ricky Vaughn was still out there. But for now, amid the fire, the blood, and the endless snow, life had won a single, fragile victory. The wind returned with the dawn, carrying the scent of ash and pine over the quiet ruins of the Silver Ridge Sheriff's Station. The fire had died sometime before sunrise, leaving behind only smoke and silence. Nathan Cole stood among the blackened beams, his coat torn and soot-streaked, exhaustion etched into the hard lines of his face. The storm from the night before had passed, but inside him another storm raged, one made of guilt, fear, and the raw ache of loss. Emma Hart was gone. It had happened in minutes. After the chaos, after the fire, after the gunfire faded into snow, he had turned to call for her, and found only footprints leading into the tree line, too light to belong to any man. They'd taken her. Marcus Caney had taken her. The same voice that haunted his screens now had a body in his grasp. Dakota limped beside him, her body still frail from giving birth, but her eyes burned with a fierce maternal fire. Her fur was streaked with ash, and her breathing was uneven. But she didn't rest. She refused. Around her legs, a small wooden crate held 4 tiny pups wrapped in a wool blanket. Their whimpers were soft, almost like whispers, the only sound in a town that had gone dead. Nathan crouched beside Dakota and ran his hand over her head. "We'll get her back," he said quietly. His voice cracked, but his conviction did not. He turned as Sarah Whitfield stepped out from a black government SUV. She was in her early 40s, tall and angular, with the kind of posture that made rooms fall silent. Her hair was silver blonde, tied tightly at the back of her neck, and her gray trench coat looked too clean for the ruin around them. She was an agent with the Federal Investigative Bureau of Cyber Crimes, one of the few people who had believed Nathan when he warned about Kane Tech. Her face was beautiful in a severe way, sharp cheekbones, cool gray eyes, and a mouth that rarely smiled. She was a woman who had learned to replace compassion with control, though the faint tremor in her hands betrayed sleepless nights and ghosts of her own. "Nathan," she said simply, voice like cut glass. "We traced the signal." He looked up, hope and anger colliding in his gaze. "Where?" "The old rail yard, out by Miller's Crossing. Caney's people set up camp near the freight tunnels. We intercepted a transmission. He's demanding a trade." She hesitated, eyeing the crate beside him. "He wants the dog." Nathan exhaled through his teeth. "He's not getting her." Sarah stepped closer. "Listen to me. Caney isn't just another tech smuggler. He's building something. The data in that chip, whatever it is, he needs it to finish his project. He'll kill her if you don't give him what he wants." Dakota lifted her head and gave a low growl, as if understanding. Nathan looked down at her, then back at Sarah. "You don't understand. That dog's not just evidence. She's family now." Sarah's eyes softened for the briefest second, then hardened again. "Then we end it tonight." The drive to the rail yard felt endless. Snow fell in thick, lazy spirals, and the wind howled through the skeletal remains of freight cars and rusted cranes. The place looked like a graveyard of machines, silent witnesses to human greed. Nathan and Sarah moved quietly, headlights off, the engine rumbling low. Dakota sat in the back seat, muzzle resting on the edge of the crate, eyes half closed but alert. The pups slept, tiny bundles of warmth in the cold. When they arrived, the world was gray and silver, dawn struggling against storm clouds. Sarah pulled out a rifle and checked the chamber with the ease of someone who had done this too many times. "We have maybe 10 minutes before he realizes we're not alone," she said. "Your call." Nathan opened the door and stepped into the snow. No negotiations. The wind carried faint echoes, men shouting, the metallic clatter of something being dragged across steel. Then he heard her. Emma's voice, muffled, strained, calling his name. It sliced through the storm like a blade. Nathan's chest tightened. He crouched low, signaling Sarah to flank right, and began to move. In the center of the yard stood an old maintenance shack, its windows glowing faintly. Through the haze, he saw them, Caney's men, armed and restless, and in the middle, tied to a rusted beam, was Emma. Her face was pale, streaked with dirt, but her eyes burned with defiance. Then Marcus Kane stepped into view. He was nothing like Nathan had imagined, mid-50s, tall but not imposing, with the kind of posture that came from wealth and quiet cruelty. His hair was silver, his skin unnaturally smooth, and his eyes, icy blue, looked almost mechanical in the morning light. His suit was immaculate despite the snow, and when he smiled, it was thin, precise, devoid of warmth. "Mr. Cole," he called out, his voice calm, elegant, and poisonous. "I believe you have something of mine." Nathan stepped forward, rifle raised. "Let her go." Caney chuckled softly. "I'm a reasonable man. Return the unit and she lives. Defy me and you'll watch her die for a machine." "She's not a machine," Nathan growled. "Everything is, given purpose and design," Caney replied smoothly. "Even love, if you know how to program it." Before Nathan could answer, a low snarl cut through the air. Dakota was gone from the car. She moved through the snow like a ghost, silent and lethal, following the scent of Emma's blood. Caney's men turned at the last second, too late. Dakota launched herself from behind a rail car, knocking the rifle from one guard's hands and biting down hard on his arm. Chaos erupted, shouting, gunfire, smoke. Nathan ran forward, ducking behind a freight car, firing toward the shack. Sarah's voice crackled in his earpiece. "Two down on the left, I've got your flank." Her shots were clean, precise, the cold efficiency of a professional. Caney turned, shouting orders, his composure finally cracking. Dakota lunged at another man, taking a bullet in her shoulder but refusing to stop. She slammed into Kane, knocking him backward. His gun flew from his hand and skidded across the ice. "Nathan!" Emma screamed. He sprinted forward, grabbing the rifle as Caney staggered to his feet. For a moment, their eyes met. Soldier and tyrant, both born from systems that forgot to feel. Nathan leveled the barrel. Caney smiled faintly, blood on his lip. "You think killing me changes anything?" "No," Nathan said, "but it's a start." Before he could fire, Dakota growled, standing protectively over Emma. Sirens wailed in the distance. Sarah's reinforcements. Caney looked around, realizing the net was closing. "My cargo doesn't run," he hissed. "This one does," Nathan replied. Dakota leapt again, knocking him into the snow just as federal agents swarmed the yard. The sound of handcuffs clicked like punctuation to the long night's chaos. Marcus Kane, once the untouchable architect of crime, lay still in the snow, his empire collapsing around him. When the sun finally broke through the clouds, it turned the snow into gold. Nathan stood beside Emma as medics tended to Dakota's wound. The four pups wriggled inside their crate, small and alive, their tiny hearts beating against the cold. Emma smiled weakly, her hand finding his. "We made it," she whispered. He looked at the horizon, where the light spilled across the mountains. "No," he said softly. "We're just beginning." Weeks later, the old fire station reopened as the Silver Ridge K-9 Rescue and Training Center. On the front steps stood a new sign carved in wood, "For the ones who ran and the ones who found them." Dakota, now fully recovered, sat proudly beneath it, a silver badge on her collar engraved with one word, Honorary K-9. The wind moved gently through the pines, carrying with it laughter, hope, and the faint echo of a promise kept. And somewhere in the snow, beneath the light of a new dawn, the world finally felt quiet. Sometimes God hides his miracles in the smallest, coldest corners of our lives, in the wounded, the lost, and the forgotten. On the mountain of Silver Ridge, it wasn't just a man, a woman, and a dog fighting against evil. It was faith fighting against despair. When Dakota crawled from the storm, when Nathan refused to abandon her, when Emma risked everything to bring life into a burning world, those were not coincidences. They were divine alignments, moments where heaven whispered, "I am still here." The snow that once buried them became the very blanket of new life. The barks of newborn pups echoed like hymns of rebirth, reminding us that even in our darkest hours, God works quietly through courage, kindness, and love. Maybe the miracles we pray for don't arrive as lightning or angels, but as people and creatures who refuse to give up. So as you finish this story, take a moment to look around your own life. Maybe there's a Dakota out there waiting for your kindness. Maybe the storm you're facing is not meant to destroy you, but to reveal your strength and faith. If this story touched your heart, please share it. Let someone else feel that spark of hope. Leave a comment about the moment that moved you most, and don't forget to subscribe, because every story we tell carries a small miracle waiting to reach the next soul in need. May God bless you, protect your loved ones, and guide you through every storm until your own dawn breaks, just like over Silver Ridge.